It is time for the fourth major of this golf season as the Open Championship, the 150th Open Championship is coming up this week. And of course, that means there is some DFS to be played, some money to be won, some courses to be broken down. So let's dive in and get you set for this week's Open Championship from a DFS perspective. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Sorry, the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, I keep trying to demote you. How you doing today?
Good. Xander's winning. Finally. He's got like 9 wins in his past 3 starts. It's crazy.
I was told he wasn't an alpha and couldn't win. And you know, this doesn't align with the narratives I saw pushed on Twitter. What's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of variance in golf when it comes to winning, and anyone who really thinks that like golfers as good as Xander like don't have what it takes to win.
Doesn't have that dog in him.
He shows up at like every single major. He's on the leaderboard anytime there's a good field, and people think that he just like is out there winning. No disrespect to the John Deere, but like it's not like he's just winning, you know, these lower quality events.
Yeah, I'm shocked he didn't skip the Open to play the CUDA this week. Like, you know, I was expecting that. I was expecting the withdrawal, the Rob Bolton tweet of like, hey, he withdrew. He's going to play the CUDA instead.
Get those FedEx Cup points. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, got to game the system a little bit. But I think that what this is setting up for is Xander is now the number 2 favorite to win this week's Open Championship, which means I would say by 9 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, which I mean afternoon-ish across the pond, we're going to see tweets about, Xander can't show up when everything matters because he's gonna go like 1 over. And we'll be like, oh, he was the number 2 favorite. You know, Xander wilts under pressure. Blah blah blah. That's what this is setting up for. You know that, correct?
Well,
if he doesn't win this week, someone's gonna tweet that. I guarantee it. I love to lean on strawman, as you know.
If we just stay off Twitter, then we're not subject to the silliness of downplaying somebody for not winning, you know, 3.
I judge the public's takes based on the comment section on, you know, whatever, pick your random news website. So I don't actually know what you're talking about.
Look, I mean, what it comes down to is, again, winning golf tournaments is hard. Even things like holding 54-hole leads and converting them, that does not have enough context into like who was close, who else was in the field, how many guys, you know, were within a few shots. And also, I don't see how holding a 54-hole lead is ever a bad thing. And sometimes people treat that worse than just not even being close to contention. So
you got to have a lead to blow a lead.
It's like LeBron in the finals. Like, you know what? You know how you lose in NBA Finals, though, is you got to get to the NBA Finals.
You know how you get a fourth quarter comeback? You're trailing in the fourth quarter. You know, it's like one of those things. Like there are these situations like that. So, are you guaranteeing a Xander victory at the Open Championship this week?
Not a guarantee, but
fraud.
I mean,
fraud. You're a fraud Xander fan. You were not there. Was he a win pick for you last week? I didn't listen, obviously.
No, I didn't quite get to Xander
fraud.
As a
fraud.
win pick.
Fraud.
He wasn't. Well, he was like
fraud.
I like Xander.
Fraud alert, Brandon Gadula.
It was honestly like one of those where I thought he'd be a good pick for this week for the old course, and I was like, you know, you can't really pick the same guy. And the irony, the irony's not lost on me here.
You're not picking Xander every single
week. I get it, but I was like, you know what? He's gonna be sort of like a tier 2 play for me last week, and then I'm gonna, you know, fire on all cylinders. But now that, as you mentioned, his His win odds are down to 13-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook.
They're shorter than they were for last week.
Yeah, that's steep. He was 20-1. Liked him there. So we'll talk plenty about Xander later on because we got a firecracker of a field, to use a term from across the pond. And
is that actually a term? All my terms for like British things are from Love Island and the BBC's Formula One podcast. That is my total consumption of like British like slang. I think that those two are not the same thing. So I might be like getting a wide range here, but I don't know if that covers the entire lexicon.
I've definitely heard some soccer goals referred to as firecrackers. So, or sorry, football goals.
Jenny Gao, who hosts the BBC Formula One podcast, will say twiddly bits when referring to like some turns. So I'm going to work that in somewhere. It'll be organic, not forced. I'm just calling my shot right now. Sure. We'll talk about St. Andrews. We'll talk about everything you need to know about this week's event in just 1 second. But first, the PGA back in a big way this weekend with a massive daily fantasy contest on FanDuel for the Open Championship. This week's PGA Mega Eagle contest includes $400,000 in total prizes, with first place netting $100K. Best of all, just $9 to enter to get yourself a chance at all that cash. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Also, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We, of course, have this PGA podcast every week, but also MLB podcast every weekday. We got UFC and NASCAR as well. Everything right there where Brandon's pointing if you're watching YouTube. To subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get those podcasts right as they are posted. I'm sure the people listening in the podcast version are like, what is he pointing at?
And the people watching are
audio
like,
medium.
And of course, the people watching are like, of course, he pointed to the wrong side of the screen first and had to find his bearings.
I thought you were pointing your Twitter handle, and I was very confused.
No, never.
After telling us to stay off Twitter, you then point your Twitter handle. Never. So people are complex, Brandon. So let's dive in and talk about this Open Championship. It is at St. Andrews Golf Links, the old course. It is 7,313 yards and a par 72. Of course, St. Andrews has a storied history of hosting the Open. They've hosted it 29 or 30 times previously, a whole bunch. They hosted it back in 2015, hosted it in 2010, 2005, 2000, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are 156 golfers in the field for this week. The top 70 golfers plus ties make the cut after the first 36 holes. There is no 10-shot rule, just top 70, not 65 for this week plus ties for the Open Championship. And Brandon, the good thing is, unlike a lot of majors, we actually do know a lot about this course. The old course is St. Andrews. What do we need to know about this course before we fill out lineups for this week?
Yeah, so this is the 30th time that this is hosted. And thankfully, I mean, we can dig back to 1873, look at the strokes gained data from...
Not going to do that.
From
ShotLink.
Did they even
Shout
have
out ShotLink.
They didn't have lasers back then.
Are you sure?
No, they had lasers. Yeah, they had all the coverage.
You said they didn't. When we're late, not we're. So if you put "when were" in a Google search, the things that pop up as suggestions are weird. So lasers were invented in December of 1958. So we still got a couple Open Championships since lasers were invented. That's good.
Yeah. So I mean, look, we have a lot of history at the old course, but realistically, ShotLink data non-existent, and we basically had this thing played every 5 years since 2000. So we can look at some more general stats as well. But one thing that stands out to me, digging back into the more recent Open Championships, is that it's been a lot of like runaway winners. There was a 3-man playoff in 2015, but before that, the past 3 winners were 5 shots or better. But if you look back at full season stats in terms of, and compare those to in tournament stats, like in tournament strokes gained, which stroke differential, we can figure out strokes gained without ShotLink and lasers, but we can't figure out off the tee and the grain there and stuff. But you have to be a good golfer, basically. The better golfers fare well here. Full season stroke differential correlates really strongly with success during the tournament. So what that tells us is the golfers in good form during a year tend to separate here. Makes sense. We see that basically at every single major, which is why one of my key stats tends to be just strokes gained average or whatever form it is you want, adjusted, long, just anything in that regard, because we want good golfers to simplify, to boil things down. But distance also matters here. I'm going to use strokes gained off the tee, but distance over accuracy is sort of what's jumping out because very, very wide fairways. And the analysis I did show an emphasis on driving distance. Again, sort of comparing things back to performance within the specific Open at St. Andrews. Irons are going to matter. Scrambling is going to matter a bit, but like ultimately, you want good golfers. You want good ball strikers. You want guys who can gain distance. You want guys who can make birdies. I don't know how easy this is going to play. The winners have been, 15, 16, 14, 19, and 6 under. Again, a lot of those were like sort of standout winners. So maybe like 12 under. Then again, the distance gains that we've seen since even 2015. It's going to depend on like what the weather is. And we'll talk about weather later on, but we could honestly be looking more at a 15 under winner. Whereas with a lot of majors, we're looking more for like bogey avoidance than birdie or better rate. But overall, for me, I'm looking for that long-term form. That's my number one key stat: strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, driving distance, and birdie or better rate for this week.
So we know that overall form matters most, and that's going to be our big thing. But you mentioned that distance does matter too. So let's talk about someone like Cameron Smith, who's not super long off the tee, but is a tremendous overall golfer. How much do you ding someone of that archetype who is a good overall golfer, but is not a bomber, given the way this course sets up?
So only a little bit, because Cam Smith isn't like specifically prohibitively short. If you look at like a Z score, he's about 0.21 below the average of this field, which is not that bad. I can talk about rankings, but specifically with like driving distance, you can see a lot of clustered rankings, and someone can be 15th or 40th and have a difference of like 2 yards off the tee on average. So I don't really like to look at just specific rankings when it comes to really anything. I use e-scores to drive everything, but I just refer to things as percentiles because it's a lot simpler. But for Cam Smith specifically, I think he stands out because you're going to have to be creative in certain spots. That's one of the things that you have to do at the old course. And one thing I didn't get into is just how large the greens are. They are basically as big as you could even imagine in terms of relating them back to what we typically see on the PGA Tour. And so you're going to see a lot of lag putting. You're going to see a lot of long first putts. And that's why one of my sort of like secondary stats, or one of the things I'm looking for, is like actually like lag putting and 3-putt avoidance, because you're going to be in positions to make 3 putts. It's hard to 3-putt unless you're me on a smaller green, but with these huge greens, like your first putt is going to matter a lot. So Cam Smith, one of the best iron players in the world, plays well in the wind. We saw that at the Players. And he's going to be able to sort of be creative with the short game and lag putt. So Cam Smith specifically, I don't mind. But yeah, distance overall, I think, does give you a leg up. I don't think you have to be long. And one thing I will note is we've seen Louis Oosthuizen and Zach Johnson win here. Louis at the time was gaining distance on the field. ZJ was basically field average when he won. So it wasn't like they were short. We don't think of them as big hitters now, but that is one thing that I found in my research. So I think Cam Smith fits that mold. I think he's a really interesting play this week because it seems like the luster is wearing off on Cam Smith, but he was T10 last week at the Genesis Scottish Open. And, it's a piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so let's talk here about what golfers have done previously at the Open Championship. We're going to open this up here, of course, because we focus on just St. Andrews. We're looking at just, 2010, 2015, and that's probably not like irrelevant data, but it's probably pretty darn close.
Do you want to play Zach Johnson?
Yeah. Or Louis, honestly. Louis is fine, but not going to factor that in too much there. We're going to talk about the Open Championship, though, because you mentioned wind. Wind is typically a factor in these conditions, obviously typically a links-style course as well. So there are some correlations between previous years at the Open Championships. So, Brandon, you dug back and looked at what golfers have done at previous Open Championships. Who stood out in this format as far as getting a boost at this type of course?
Jordan Spieth has the best Open Championship form in terms of strokes gained per round since 2017. It's not particularly close, and I have all these numbers in this list in my helper up on numberFire.com, which is just sort of a very good reference for if you want to see this list straight up. But Spieth has a win, 4 top 25s in all 4 starts, 3 top 10s. He's just a really good Open Championship player. But second up is Robert McIntyre, who I think will get a lot of buzz this week. I see the case for it, but he's finished top 10 in both of his starts at the Open Championship and the sample. Brooks Koepka, top 10 in 3 of his 4. I typically just sort of talk myself into Brooks for every major, but that's kind of wearing on me, and I think I'm not going to do it this time around. Tony Finau, very interesting for this week. 3 top 25s in his 4 starts in the sample. Tommy Fleetwood, usually like around, but not a whole lot of upside. 1 top 10 in those 4 starts. Shane Lowry's a former winner. Rory, who we're going to talk about plenty this week, 3 or 4 made cuts, but 2 of those were top 5s. Francesco Molinari's got a win. Xander shows up at basically every major. He's 4 for 4 with made cuts, 2 top 25s. John Rahm and Matt Kuchar round out that list for me of notable form at the past Opens. Among golfers with at least 2 starts, and I will mention that Colin Morikawa obviously won his lone Open start. Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland also good in their lone starts to date. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty interesting list. And again, it goes back to like, if you just play the best long-term golfers, like as many studs as you can, it's really not going to be that bad of a lineup. So
do you care about like Open history in terms of like bumping up golfers or down? Do you care about major performance history? If like, let's say like there are a lot of guys, Max Homa, Patrick Cantley, who I will consider this week, who don't have like spike weeks in majors, but have good overall form, even when you adjust for field strength. Do you care if guys have not flashed against this type of competition?
Only a little bit. Cantley, I was actually looking more into him because, again, you want long-term form and good all-around stats. That's Cantley every single week.
Right.
But he's had some poor putting performances in majors, which is interesting. You don't really expect that to stick around because he's a good putter. Max Homa, a little bit of a different case, wasn't really the same class of player he is now. And since he's become, winning like a multi-time winner on the PGA Tour, he was T13 at the PGA. I think was decent at the U.S. Open, but my memory is not very good. I just remember that he did flash at the PGA, but I've seen enough from Homa now. Yeah. Cameron Young, we were talking about before the show. He's got really bad major performances. I think he's missed 4 cuts with 1 top 5 in there, and Cameron Young's a different golfer now than he used to be like years ago, even 3 years ago. So I think it's a lot of there's a lot of nuance that's required, and you can't really give nuance to 150 golfers. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit like it's a piece of the puzzle. I want to see good major form. If I don't see it, I'll look into things and try to figure out why.
Sure.
But it's not like it's an absolute must for someone to be, rock solid in majors, or else I won't consider them.
Okay. And like Brandon said, if you want to see the list of guys who have done well at previous Open Championships, you can find that in the PC wrote over on numberFire.com. So let's talk about some current form here. We'll go through 6 golfers who have noteworthy form one way or another. I'm not sure which side Xander Schauffele falls in that. Is he in here for good form or bad, Brandon? Please enlighten me on this.
It's decent. Okay. I think we could call it an upswing.
Okay.
Won the Zurich with Patrick Cantley, and then won the Travelers. Was the 54-hole leader at the Genesis Scottish Open, and converted with what he sort of called like his worst stuff of the week on Sunday. Almost didn't convert, but ultimately did. And we're going to remember that he won, a couple weeks from now, not that he almost didn't win. That's just how things go. So it's important to keep that stuff in mind long term. And Xander now has 13 of 15 made cuts in 2022 with 6 consecutive top 20s. Data Golf on their true strokes gained query tool over the past 3 months now ranks Xander second in the field behind someone you'll talk about in just a moment. I think Xander, process-wise, was a core play regardless of what he did last week. He went out and won. That is probably going to make him popular. He always is pretty popular. I guess, despite people thinking he can't win, tends to be very popular in terms of DFS. But I can't really nitpick Xander. We know that the win odds are shortening, but obviously the salary on FanDuel is locked in, so that's not going to shift. So I think Xander is standing out as one of the best plays of the week. We got to talk about the rest of the studs, though. So talk to me about Rory, and we'll we'll dissect the top of the field a little bit.
I will happily talk to you about Rory. So we'll talk about Rory right now. Xander down at 11.3, whereas Rory McIlroy is the highest salary golfer in the field at 12,000, but it's for a good reason because Rory playing well right now. He's been on a tear. If we start with the Masters, his worst finish in 7 events is 19th. More than half of those 7, so 4 out of 7, have been top 5s, including a win at the RBC Canadian Open. Rory was second at the Masters. I know, obviously, not like quote unquote in contention until Sunday, but like he did, second is still second. 8th at the PGA Championship, 5th at the US Open. The Open Championship recently has been shaky. Obviously, he won it here back in 2014, or not here, but he did win it back in 2014. He's top 5 3 years after that, but missed the cut in 2019. He was 46th last year. But also, I don't care. He's red hot right now. Finished 3rd at St. Andrews all the way back in 2010. So, he fits this course. He knows this course. I'm having a hard time ranking anyone ahead of him straight up. But what about you? What's your read on Rory? What's your read on Xander, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, Rory is the best play overall, regardless of salary to me. I'm not going to be alone in that. He's the betting favorite. Mm-hmm. He is the highest salary golfer. That almost always means he's going to be the most popular play of the week. But best long-term golfer in my database, best tee to green golfer over the past year in my database as well. He's going to gain distance. Trails only Jon Rahm over the past 50 rounds on tour and distance gained on the field. And one of the issues with Rory can be, well, I guess these are 2 issues, but how are the wedges doing? They're better right now. Whether that sticks or not, we'll find out. And then how's the putter going? He's really putting well right now from long range, yes, but also from within close. 88th percentile over the past 50 rounds within 15 feet. Very clutch range there. 93rd percentile from 15 or greater feet. He's going to get they're all going to get lengthy putts. You got to knock it close, avoid those 3 putts. But yeah, I mean, Rory's the best play of the week. Xander, as I mentioned, he's going to be just the second place I look because of the salary being what it is. I know I won't be alone in that, but we can find other ways to differentiate. That's going to leave a lot of golfers, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, Colin Morikawa, a bit overlooked because I would think most people would rank Rory and Xander at salary, 1 and 2 in some capacity. But yeah, I think that they're the 2 standout plays above 11,000. And then if I'm going to rank just a top 3, I would put Will Zalatoris there on number 3 at 11,000 even.
So I think that's kind of the key thing for me is that I think Xander and Rory relative to salary are probably the two of the best plays in the field. But I also think there are other good plays in the same salary ranges as them who will have their roster rate trimmed. They will not be low rostered, but they will have trimmed roster rates as a result of all the attention Xander and Rory will get. And Jordan Spieth too, because you mentioned that the Open Championship history, people love Spieth justifiably. He's awesome. But that's going to get that attention. And so my thought process here is, okay, how do I view Scotty Scheffler? How do I view Justin Thomas? Matt Fitzpatrick at 11-2. Obviously did just win a major, but he's not the hot name right now because we saw Xander win. He's not Spieth, stuff like that. Zalatoris, obviously, you were talking about guys proving it in majors. He's done that pretty obviously.
Hasn't won yet, so
yeah, no dog in him. So I think that's kind of the takeaway for me. For a cash game, I'm probably just going Rory and Xander. I think I can get to that set from a salary perspective and feel pretty okay with it. And I like them for tournaments. I will not full fade them. I'd like to use them, but I'm okay not going overweight on them, maybe being even with the field or a little bit below in order to get exposure to, I think specifically Scheffler, JT, Zalatoris. Those are the guys I like actively want to seek out. I think that they're tremendous plays this week. Again, not at low roster rates, but I think reduced from where they should be.
Yeah, I think the field drops off at 10-9. I should say after 10-9 with Cameron Smith. What's up?
10-7. Rude.
Okay.
Rude. What?
All right. So that's
Patrick Cantley is 10-7, by the way. That's why I'm offended by this.
Well, I saw Dustin Johnson there behind Cam Smith.
You can ignore him. Cantley. Come on, man. Like,
well, I like Hideki at 10-5. So now we're just opening up this rabbit hole. But I think anyone from Cam Smith and above is very justifiable.
sorry. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned being like open to pivoting. I think that's something we talk about every single major. Just you can play John Rahm at maybe like, or one or two of these guys are just going to be like on half as many rosters as like Rory and Xander, and you can get a lot of leverage just by playing them. I'm fine with that. But as it stands, among the 11,000 and above range, I feel pretty good with Rory, Xander, and Zalatoris. JT would be the first place I'd go from there. Love him as I think I just like him more as a bet because
JT over Scheffler
for DFS.
Yeah. Okay.
Bet
potentially. Let me think on it. I'm inclined to say yes because I'm going to bet JT and I can have an emotional hedge. So actually, I might bet Scheffler too. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think I'm pretty open to that for this week. And I think that's the right way to view things. So again, for me at least, I will not full fade those guys. But I'm okay being, I want to make sure I have enough exposure to Scheffler and JT and Zalatoris to benefit if they do well. And if that means I'm at 25% Rory, I prefer to be around 30, 35. But if I have to drop down 25% to get the requisite exposure to those guys to benefit if they do well, that's okay. I can make that trade-off personally. So let's move on and talk about the mid-range and value tier guys who are in noteworthy form heading into the Open Championship. You're talking about Tony Finau. We talked about Finau, I think, going into the U.S. Open. We talked about him somewhat recently, but he keeps doing well. So what are you seeing with Finau here, and what does that mean for him at 9-9?
At what?
9-9.
So with Finau, the recent form is really good. If you, I wrote a piece for numberFire looking at like stabilization rates of strokes gained data, and if you look at like the soonest, like the quickest, shortest time frames for ball striking and short game stats, he's basically behind just Xander in terms of like what you could call recent form, in that sense. But overall, like we know, the finishes are good. He has gained strokes from approach in all but 2 measured events in 2022. If you want results, T2 at the Mexico Open, T41 at the Wells Fargo, T30 at the PGA, T4 at the Charles Schwab, solo second at the RBC Canadian Open, missed the cut at the US Open, but then 13th at the Travelers. Again, someone we can also rely on in majors, which is not a must, but it's nice to see. Since 2017, he's 17 of 20 in terms of made cuts with 9 top 10s. Half of those were top 25s. I think that he's a good play. I think some of the luster's worn off, but I have seen him bet down from 48-1 to 40-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Like Tony Finau at 99. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that he's definitely someone I'm receptive to. My question for you is, do you prefer him to Joaquin Neiman, who is at 98? And I think would be the one hang up to me, feeling like super, super jazzed about Finau.
So I like both. I'd probably have to flip a coin, honestly, if I had 9,900 left for my final golfer. I think I'd probably lean toward Finau. I can trust the long-term major history better. He's got really good like lag putting numbers, which could be very fluky.
True.
But it could also just be that he's a good distance putter, but struggles from within close. I trust him more to gain distance on the field, even though Neiman's right there. So I think it's more a question of those two versus Cameron Young. who's also in that same tier for me.
Yeah, Young's betting odds are very long, which is always concerning to me, at least. But I think that he's had a 3-event sample where he struggled, and your research has shown that's where things like get close to stabilizing, but maybe not quite at that point yet, because he had a missed cut in there, I think. So he's not at like 12 rounds or anything yet. That's the concern to me. I would say guys I am interested in, guys who have my attention in that range, are Burns at 10-1 if you want to loop him in. Not as into Fleetwood. I think he's fine. I think that'll probably be too popular for my personal preference there. Feno, Neiman. I think that was it. And Young. I think that those are the ones who have my like pretty extreme attention in that range. I think it's a pretty good range too. So I do like them, even though I think they're a legitimate tier fall off behind guys like Hideki at 10-5.
Yeah, I'm with you. This does, though, feel like a classic major field where you could build a lineup centering on those options and have you still have good win equity. You'd be missing out on the elites from that regard, like with Rory, Scheffler, Rahm, JT, Xander, and Cam. But I have Cameron Smith a lot higher than his win odds are, but so I like the tier.
I do too. Okay, let's talk here about Max Homa, who is below this tier at $9,000. Just golfing super well recently to the point where he's up to 12th in Data Golf's true strokes gained across the past 6 months, which is pretty sick for Max Homa. And the question is what we talked about before. Can he carry that form into a major? Homa finished 16th at the Scottish Open. That was his 8th top 20 in 13 events since the start of February. And he's shown upside too. Obviously, he had the win at the Wells Fargo. He was 5th at the Memorial. And those are not like bad events. Like they're not majors, but they're not bad events. But we haven't seen Homa blow up in a major yet. He's made the cut in just 5 of 11 majors since he turned a full-time pro. But 4 of those made cuts have been consecutive since he kind of became, Max Homa. His finishes in those were 40th, 48th, 13th, and 47th. It's not great, but also, made cuts in majors are made cuts in majors. I'm willing to overlook that personally. He's been good against decent fields. So doesn't seem like he's a feeder field disaster or a feeder field feaster or anything. If we're going to, coin that term, feeder field feaster. His form is very good right now. So for 9,000, I think that Homa don't really care that much about his major history. I think that I just want to use him and make him one of my core plays this week. What about you? Where are you at on Max Homa?
Yeah, I love him this week. He won the Genesis. That's pretty nice to see in terms of if we're trying to figure out if the form can hold up against tough competition. And he is basically just gaining strokes across the board in every category, which is exactly what you want to see. I think that he's just one of the best value plays, if not the best value play of the week.
Okay, I think that our name stack of the week, if we're going to do this now, we'll get out of the way early, is a Homa stack where you do Homa, obviously, but the HOMA also gets you Thomas's. So you get JT, Thomas Peters, it's fine. Thomas Dietrich, probably not. Can we flip a Tom in here? Like, is Tommy Fleetwood the actual name Thomas? Go with that. So Homa, JT, Peters, Tommy Fleetwood. I think that the Homa name stack is the way to go for this week.
Thomas Paul Fleetwood.
Is it? Okay. So he's in there.
What if he was Polly Fleetwood?
If he were Polly Fleetwood, he'd be a plumber in New Jersey. So that's a good career. I just don't think I'd use him in DFS. Good career. Not going to use him in DFS, though. Let's talk here about Keegan Bradley. Not involved, I don't think, in the Homa stack, unless he's secretly named Thomas or Homa Keegan Bradley. He's $8,700 and also grades out pretty well when you adjust for field strength. And the putting numbers kind of not that bad. I hesitate to say that because I think I'm going to jinx it. There's no wood for me to knock on. But, what do you see with Keegan right now?
Yeah, 13th in true strokes gained over the past 3 months. Just recently in contention at the U.S. Open. Salary of $8,700, I think, is someone that's you got to consider that territory. Missed the cut at the Genesis Scottish Open from awful putting, which is always a possibility with Keegan Bradley, but he's just is pretty much a lock to gain strokes with his approach play. He has 3 top 10s and 4 top 25s in his past 7 stroke play events. We know that he finishes well because of ball striking, and I hope this came across, but like this is a ball striking course. You're going to have to hit these greens, which again, big greens, but firm. You're going to want to try to not leave yourself with 60 feet putts too often. I think that Keegan makes a lot of sense. The big question is always just going to be the putter, but does he do enough for you at 8,700?
Yeah, for sure. I was, when he was first starting to like round into this form, I was a bit hesitant because like I think we all have had the Keegan experience where it sticks with you, but like he keeps doing it. I know that obviously the putting last week was not good, but like if you look at a larger sample, it's been fine for a decently large sample. He has bad weeks, and that makes his floor low, but like find me a golfer at 87 who doesn't have a low floor. And then once you fruitlessly go through that exercise because you won't find anyone, find me someone who has a good ceiling. That's tougher. And I think that Keegan has that. So I think I can accept the risks with him and know that I could be cursing at my phone on Friday morning or whatever it may be. But like, that's kind of true with everyone in this value range. I'd rather take someone who has a path to an upside type week. And I think that Keegan does have that.
Yeah, that's why he's going to be someone I consider this week. Any savings goes a long way. 8,700, even down from like 9,300, goes a long way to getting back up from, while we like the Tony Finau tier, getting back up to like a Hideki or Cam Smith, like that's going to help us. So yeah, I guess it's Keegan week.
It is Keegan week. What could possibly go wrong? Let's finish up the current form discussion here by talking about Juyong Kim. Kim has had some interesting spike weeks recently in noteworthy fields, and I think that that's at least makes him worth discussing at $7,600. He is more worth discussing than I am right now. Most recently, Kim was third at the Scottish Open. Obviously, we saw that this past week. Before that, he was 23rd at the U.S. Open. He also had a 17th at the AT&T Byron Nelson, not to mention some really good finishes on the Asian Tour. That's all good. But Kim did lose distance compared to the field of the U.S. Open. Basically got carried by a short game there. He doesn't seem all that long off the tee, and we don't have a great sample to say he's lights out with his irons. So my worry is that these good finishes have been fueled by short game. What's your read on Kim based on what we've seen?
Yeah. Also goes by Tom Kim, by the way, which comes from Thomas the Tank Engine. I just thought that people would want to know that.
So is he in the Homa stack then? I know it's not Thomas, but like,
I think that would work.
Yeah.
I think you could.
I think that's important.
Justify that.
I think it's an important question to ask, at least.
Yeah, I would say so. Almost made it to a playoff too for the Genesis Scottish Open, but I think 3-putted from like 60 feet, which again is probably going to come into play a lot this week, but on his 72nd. But yeah, I mean, I see the case for it because of the good finishes. I just think sometimes it's not necessarily worth like the risk of such a low cut probability just to get back up to another stud. Like give me Keegan and Hideki versus like Rory and Tom Kim, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that works exactly, but something like that.
Yeah. I think if I could confirm that it was via ball striking, I'd be more inclined to buy in. And that's kind of the hang up for me. Can't do that right now. So I'm okay.
Very good around the green right now.
Yes.
According to the data golf stuff. And that's flukier even than putting. So
would you have the same mindset towards Jordan L. Smith? Because he finished top 25 at the Scottish Open as well.
Spreadsheet ruiner.
Yeah, you have to do Jordan L. Smith, Jordan L. with no period, Jordan Smith. You have to do all those.
Yeah. I just look, 1 week of data is not really enough to get too excited about. And somewhere, I think I have this open. Yeah. So I'll actually tweet this one, but I just pulled last year's Scottish Open and, where guys finished in the Open. And, usually good finishes at the Scottish Open led to decent finishes at the Open. But we also have Minwoo Lee, who won. He missed the cut. Thomas Dietrich was tied for second at the Scottish Open last year, missed the cut.
But he's Lucas in the Homa stack, so he's guaranteed to make the cut this year.
Lucas Herbert was T4, same as Ryan Palmer. Both of those guys missed the cut. So it's not necessarily enough to chase a good result at the Scottish Open. So I'm probably not going to get there. I think that in majors, it can be tempting to take some risk, but you want 6 chances to hit the winner, and the thought that Tom Kim's going to win the Open Championship, I think, is probably a little bit too optimistic.
Yeah. So as much as I love Juyong Kim, I think that the Thomas the Tank Engine nickname is very fitting. He looks great. Huge fan, but not going to use him in DFS yet this week. Let's dive into what bookmakers are saying about the Open Championship. Rory Mcilroy, the favorite of FanDuel Sportsbook, he is 10-1. Then there's a jump down to Xander Schauffele at 13-1 with Jordan Spieth at 15-1. John Rahm 16-1. The 18-1 coupling is Matt Fitzpatrick and Scotty Scheffler. Shane Lowry 20-1 with JT at 21-1. Cam Smith is 22-1. Follow the Patrick Cantley at 26-1. Will Zalatoris is 27-1 with Colin Morikawa rounding at the top group at 28-1. So let's talk about Scheffler and JT here, because we talked about them before with the Rory and Xander. Thank you. Discussion. Do you think these odds are too long on them, or is it an appropriate reaction to something that I'm overlooking? I know JT was not good last week, but I also don't care.
Yeah, again, 1 week of data is not indicative of anything, especially when the baseline is Scotty Scheffler or Justin Thomas. We know what these guys are, and you either think that 1 bad week of data is the end of their careers, or it doesn't matter. So I think we're I'm starting to see a lot of overreactions the more that I'm digging in to betting odds, and even things like top 10s like Hideki. His odds are really drifting. So for sure, I would say JT and Scheffler, more so JT, undervalued in terms of the betting odds. I think that people can very easily just match, the betting odds to the salaries and play Rory, play Xander, play Spieth over these guys. We're talking specifically about Scheffler and JT, but John Rahm has distance. He can be a really good lag putter. The putting is trending back up for Rahm overall. The wedge play is still a little bit of a concern, but you're not going to actively fade John Rahm. You're just maybe not going to get there. So yeah, I think JT, Scheffler would be good outright bets at these numbers, but also great pivots.
I would also say that it's important to note that betting lines are not sharper for majors than other events, because there's a lot more public interest in them, which means there's a lot more public money. We talked about this with John Sheeran, who is one of the bookmakers at FanDuel Sportsbook during the NFL playoffs. And he's like, it can be tough to set lines, but you're also getting more public money during the playoffs. So it's actually not that bad of a thing. So when you see Xander at 13-1, that does not mean that Xander's win odds are 6%. I'm trying to do the math in my head. I don't know, the implied odds, whatever. Anyway, I can pull up a calculator if I want to. But anyway, it doesn't mean that that's representative of what his actual odds are. JT and Scheffler being 18-1 does not mean that their odds are closer to 4 or 5% or whatever. So take that with a grain of salt. Don't make the odds your be all end all in terms of how you pick golfers this week. Guys can be undervalued by the market, especially in events that have more public money involved with them, which is what this is here. So don't overreact. If you like someone who has long betting odds, like Cameron Young, don't overreact to the fact that their odds may be too long. It just probably means that they'll be less rostered. Obviously, you want to take the guidance of people with money on the line. Typically, betting odds will give you that. And I do think it's a good tool overall. Just don't make it the only thing you consider. Consider other things as well. Which golfers' odds, speaking of after I poop on the betting odds, which golfers' odds have shifted most notably of late?
Well, yeah, the thing I was going to say, and we'll see this with the number one name here with Xander Schauffele going from 20 to 1 to 13 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook from, I believe, Friday is when I pulled these initially to try to get some, let the weekend of the Scottish really like dig in and track those changes from there. But 20 to 13 is pretty substantial, and betting odds really reflect not so much like underlying strokes gain data, but finishing positions and like wins and top tens and stuff.
Right.
That's why I like to look at, I don't even look at finishing positions to make any decisions. Things like missed cuts with good good ball striking data. If you miss a cut, your odds are going to like lengthen just because you missed a cut, even if you had really good ball striking data. So that's one thing that we have just talked about for years now, and I think it's important to keep in mind. But yeah, Xander 20 to 13. Matt Fitzpatrick 20 to 18, Cam Smith 27 to 22, Patrick Cantley 33 to 26, Tommy Fleetwood 41 to 28, Joaquin Neiman 50 to 37, Tony Feno 48 to 40, Max Homa 80 to 45, and Gary Woodland also good showing last week 100 to 80. Those are the most notable golfers whose odds have shortened over the weekend.
Now, the flip side of that is if someone's shortening, unless the VIG is getting higher, someone has to lengthen too. So which golfers' odds have lengthened to make room for the Homas, the Xanders, the Matty Fitzes, etc.?
Justin Thomas, 18 to 21, which I just find like disrespectful. I mean, he's so good, and he just won a major. I think it can only be the fact that he hasn't had good good Open Championship history, but he's been playing with Tiger, and according to John Rahm, JT is the only one who ever gets any advice from Tiger. Tiger's won here multiple times, so he probably is going to be up to speed on like what to expect. Will Zalatoris as well, 22 to 27. I think he's a great bet as well with how good his major form is. Both of those guys are good win players. Colin Morikawa is 20 to 28. He gets sort of a rap that he doesn't play well in the wind, that he like feasts in sort of calmer conditions, which I'm sure he does, but he has good ball striking numbers even in the windy conditions, according to Fantasy National. I think Morikawa is the easiest fade in terms of DFS of the top guys, but that's just me. Brooks and Hideki, 33 to 42, and then Tiger Woods, who we haven't mentioned yet. I guess I just did like a second ago, but not for his own purposes. Bryson DeChambeau and Sungjae Im from 50 to 65.
This is not a betting segment. It's about betting, but it's not a betting segment.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, you could bet only one guy between Scheffler, JT, Zalatoris. Where would you go?
I'd say Zalatoris, but JT would be a strong consideration.
Okay. Asking for no one in particular but myself. Okay. Which lower salary golfers have odds stand out to you?
Max Homa. 45 to 1 at 9,000. Ryan Fox, 55 to 1 at 9,300. Robert McIntyre, 60 to 1. He's 9,300. Bryson DeChambeau, Tiger Woods, 65 to 1. I didn't even know what Tiger's salary was. He's 88. Seamus Power, Gary Woodlander, 80 to 1. Thomas Peters, 95 to 1. Those are going to be your sort of quote unquote value golfers, but with odds better than 100 to 1.
Where are you at on Peters? Because he is someone who has some length off the tee, obviously. Fine overall golfer, tends to show up in majors. Any interest for you at 86?
I mean, he's fine. He's not going to do enough to like make him a core play. Give me, what'd you say his salary was? 86?
Yeah.
Give me Keegan. I'll find an extra 100 somewhere. Go to Keegan.
Don't let's talk me into Keegan. That's for sure. Weather for this week, obviously, it's always impactful, but we're talking on Monday. So I want to, before I say this, preface this by saying make sure you check back later on this week to ensure things have not changed since we discussed this. But as of right now, wind looks pretty steady around 10 miles per hour the entire day Thursday. That is for the early wave, the late wave, et cetera, et cetera. Going to be steady at 10 miles per hour as of right now. Same thing Friday, though the winds be closer to 13 miles per hour there. So as of now, doesn't seem like you need to stack tee times. Wind's not outrageous for either of those 2 days. Wind speeds will get up to around 20 miles per hour Saturday. They'll sit around 15 miles per hour on Sunday. So wind splits, okay, definitely in play. It's not as crazy as it can be, though. And I think that that's also noteworthy because it means that scores could go lower too, which you talked about in the beginning, where scores could potentially be lower this week. But I think that as of right now, no need to go nuts with stacking in terms of tee times. But again, check back on that later on this week. Let's dive now into our player picks here for the Open Championship based on the salaries at FanDuel.com. Brandon, beginning in the upper tier, who stands out to you this week on FanDuel.com?
It's going to sound like I like everyone at the top, and I do. But if I'm picking one lineup to build around, I really want to try to get Rory in there at 12,000. I think he's the best golfer, the best sort of process-based play for the week. Best long-term golfer in the field, best long-term adjusted strokes gained tee to green, super long off the tee, putting really well, good major form, even if a lot of people can joke that a lot of the top 10s are like backdoors and non-competitive. That's still fine in DFS because only one guy can win. If Rory gets me a backdoor top 10, it's still going to be a good showing at 12,000. I do think he has a lot of win equity though. And he is the favorite to win according to my betting model.
Win juice, Rory Mcilroy. He's got it. Guaranteed. I like Rory as well for a cash game. For tournaments between JT and Scheffler, I keep going back and forth. I have Scheffler as my player pick. I think what I would say, though, is that I'm receptive to pivoting. Like a single entry lineup, I'm not going to use Rory, which stinks. I love Rory, but I would rather pivot to either JT or Scheffler. Talking about Scheffler here specifically, he's 11th in distance gained the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National, 8th in approach, 5th around the green, which is in addition to being a solid putter. Scheffler is now down to 2nd in Data Golf's true strokes gained across the past 6 months. So obviously he's a massive scrub who we cannot trust for anything, but he's right behind Rory. 0.01 strokes per round behind Rory. I still think Scheffler is awesome if he's going to come in at a lower roster rate than he would have previously. Again, we're not talking 10%, I wouldn't think, but like if he's going to be 15 instead of 20, or maybe 20 instead of 25, I'll take that. So Scotty Scheffler, I'll go with him slightly over JT, but it is honestly a coin flip, and I want my exposure to those two guys to be relatively even. Who else do you like in this upper range on FanDuel?
It's kind of a three-way tie. I would go Xander in a cash game, Cam Smith specifically in tournaments, but if I'm sort of going in between, I'd go Will Zalatoris of the three. I think they're the combination of upside and safety, just too good to pass up. I think he's just like the third best play at salary. Again, among the top, however many golfers are 11,000 and above. I initially had Jordan Spieth, who we kind of glossed over.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about Spieth's putter, which is crazy to think about, but his lag putting, his close range putting is bad. I watched him get very frustrated on the greens this past week. Don't love to see that entering a major, but Zalatoris he's a better ball striker than Spieth. Just a fantastic ball striker overall. Plays really well in the wind. And the one thing that I keep coming back to is when asked like why he plays well in majors, he said part of it is that first of all, he didn't fire at any pins at the US Open, just sort of played smart golf. Like Brooks Koepka always said, like it's not just play boring golf and you'll be in the mix. But he also said he's a really good, he called it speed putting, if I'm not mistaken, but basically lag putting. You're gonna have to do that a lot. These greens are massive and you're going to be stuck with some, 60, 70 foot putts, which are uncomfortable distances, I'm sure, for a lot of guys, because they're usually going to be closer than that. But the stats say that he's a good lag putter. We always are going to clench up a bit whenever he's got like a 3-footer to save par or something like that. But honestly, if you watch him putt, he looks great from 15 plus feet. So I think Zalatoris, just one of those plays that you're not going to regret building around Will Zalatoris. You might regret building around someone like Morikawa or Jordan Spieth. So
yeah, I have Cantley as my player pick. I might prefer Zalatoris. I'm not going to talk about him. I'll talk about Cantley, but like I was talking about how for single entry, I would not use Rory.
Would you go Cam Smith or Cantley?
What's that?
Would you go Cam Smith or Cantley?
Cantley, I think.
Okay.
By a hair. It's not by a lot. I think both are fine. But like For single entry, I might go Zalatoris over either, honestly. I do want to get a read on Zalatoris' roster rate in case he gets like the major buzz, but I don't know. I think that Xander and Spieth will keep a lid on his roster rate.
I think so too. And I went through, I made I wrote my article last week. I had all my picks in. I had, again, Spieth over Zalatoris in that sort of tier between Cam Smith and Xander. And I was like, this is so silly. Like,
yeah.
Think about who's like who you would regret not playing, or like who you might regret playing, like whichever way you want to think about it. And it's like, why would you not play Will Zalatoris this week?
I got nothing, man.
Like,
great question. I have regretted playing Patrick Cantley at several majors, so let's do it again. But with Cantley, he has not finished top 10 in the majors since 2019. But his form right now is good enough where I'm on board with him at 10-7. He was really good at the U.S. Open this year. He finished 14th there thanks to strong play both off the tee and on the green. The putting has been really good overall. Cantley ranks 9th in putting the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. That's actually the best mark of any golfer with odds shorter than 40-1. Cantley, 4th at the Scottish Open. That followed a stretch where he was 13th at the Travelers, 3rd at the Memorial, in addition to the 14th at the U.S. Open. So Cantley has his flaws, but his salary is very forgiving at 10-7. So if I'm going to like prioritize salary, I go Cantley. But I think that for single entry, I'm just going to go Zalatoris and like deal with it. I'll find the 300. I think he's the more I think about it, the more I like Zalatoris.
That's the conclusion I came to.
I agree. You're right
as well.
Yeah. Okay. Mid-range. Who you got there?
I feel weird because I'm not listing Sam Burns, but I think Sam Burns at 10-1 is very, very appealing. Despite his showing at the Scottish Open. But I'm going to stick with Tony Finau here because I think there's a lot to like about Finau. I mentioned the recent form already, but you're looking at someone who plays majors well, who's going to gain distance, who has good long putting ability. Another one of those golfers where you're like, if you stand over a 5-footer, you don't know if it's going in, but anytime he is 40 feet out, I feel like he's going to stick it close, maybe make one or two. That can go a long way to sort of getting you back on track in a particular round. So if you want ball striking, like we know at his peak, can be as good as anyone when it comes to the ball striking. So I think Finau is a really good standout at 99.
Yeah, do you like Finau? Do you like Burns, who you alluded to? The other guy in that discussion for me, in addition to Cameron Young, is Joaquin Neiman. So I'll talk about him here. Neiman, the putting has regressed pretty hard the past few events, which is not fun. But you've shown that putting specifically across a 2-event sample, not something we need to care too much about. And the ball striking has still been very good for Neiman that time. He's 23rd in distance gained and 36th in approach the past 50 rounds, 28th around the green too. Neiman's been okay in majors this year. He's finished 35th, 23rd, 47th. So not perfect, but he's 98. He's a really good golfer. I like it quite a bit. You said coin flip between Neiman and Finau. I think I agree with that. I think I'd also say coin flip. I prefer Burns over both at 10-1 if I can get there. So like the question would be, do I go Neiman plus Cantley, or do I go Zalatoris? Wait, no. Zalatoris plus Neiman or Cantley plus Burns? I think that's a good selling point for Cantley, but also I don't know. I'd probably go Zalatoris still. But that's kind of the discussion we'll have to have.
Yeah, I'd go Hideki maybe.
That's fair too. Okay, who else do you like in the mid-range here?
So a name that we're probably going to hear a lot, Robert Mcintyre. Sorry, my cat might knock down my camera.
Do it.
Almost knocked down the water as well.
Which cat?
June,
do it.
She's going nuts.
It's almost
yeah.
Do it, June. Do it.
Okay, so we're recording.
Do it, you coward.
Knock it over. We're recording in the afternoon. Every day at 4:00, she gets.
I just saw a tail.
Yeah,
is that your tail or hers?
She gets fed every day at 4. So around 3:30, she starts swarming.
All Good. Right.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself, June. Don't take his crap.
Robert Mcintyre, 9,300. I think we'll hear his name a lot this week. There's a very good chance he ends up being just a popular value play or mid-range play, whatever you want to call 9,300. But there's a case for and against him. I think the case for him sort of outweighs the sort of more nitpicky questions about the stats here. But he's one of 4 golfers to play in at least 8 majors since 2020 and make every cut. Or I guess one of 3. With Hideki and Bubba Watson, surprisingly, but he's got plus distance slightly. People kind of say that he's he just nukes it, but that's not really the case. He's a good putter as well. The issues now are like the current form's a little spotty. The driving stats not particularly great. Been an actual sort of negative with the irons lately. Don't love to see that, but I think there is something to be said for being good in majors and showing up. Playing in Scotland, I think that he's going to be a fine play at 9,300. So if I'm down here, this is probably my least favorite range, once again, of the week, like 95 to like 9,000, or I guess 91, I should say, because we have Homa there at 9,000. But Mcintyre is the one name that does stand out to me.
So you mentioned, why not use guys who are good in majors? Why not use Seamus Power? At $9,200, the exact same range as Robert Mcintyre. Power this year has been to all 3 majors. He has finished 27th, 9th, and 12th. Not bad. And he's done that. I think this is fun in a couple different ways. It's been, some via the short game, some via the ball striking. He's 21st in putting the past 50 rounds, 34th in distance gained. Should put him in a good spot. I think he's a pretty quality play at 92. Would you do a Mcintyre versus Power head-to-head?
No.
Why?
Because I think that Mcintyre is a bit too volatile to want to put into a head-to-head.
Rude? I'm upset. Anyway, I like Seamus Power. Is she back?
June's killing me, man.
I told her to fight back. Don't let him stress you, June.
Like, at least Rosa just barks from, like, off camera.
Yeah, but it's never about food. It's always about like a dump truck driver or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's every day without fail.
She's not food motivated. I wish she'd eat more. She's a little skinny girl. You need to eat more. Gotta bulk up. Get swole.
This is what we get for recording early.
Rosa doesn't understand it's gain season, okay? Like, let's try to work on this. June does. So yeah. Shout out June for understanding it's gain season. Rosa, we'll work on it, Value plays. Who are your favorite lower salaried options on FanDuel this week?
Max Homa. Should we talk about him more?
I think we can just both say Max Homa is our favorite value play. I think that the way we can talk about it is he like the core level play for you this week? Because we often talk about like the plays you build around and like, we'll build it on the studs or build it on the value plays. Because I'm differentiating a bit in my stud play, I would not be shocked at all if Homa wound up being my highest exposure golfer this week. I would not be shocked. I'm not saying I'm actively looking to do that, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happened.
I think that'll naturally end up happening.
Yeah.
He's going to be the guy that I feel most comfortable with in the sort of 9,000 range. I know we're talking Keegan, but I definitely don't feel comfortable there. The one name that I haven't really talked about that might be in that sort of tier is Mito Pereira. He's my second low salaried play that I'm recommending here. So I'll just sort of break him down, but he was a target of mine entering the Scottish Open. Started off well, didn't end too well. But he started missing cuts after 4 straight top 15s, almost won the PGA Championship, bounced back from that with good results. So it's not like this is just ever since he blew the PGA Championship, he's just been missing cuts left and right. It's not really the case. Really good tee to green player, 89th percentile over the past year with my adjustments factored in that category. Not a whole lot of major experience overall, but a good putter, good ball striker, good tee to green player. I think he's the name that's in contention for me. And at the same salary as Keegan, I have a conversation that I'll have to have with myself. I'll probably wind up about even on the two, despite the fact that we've talked about Keegan a lot on the show so far.
Well, I think that's what you do is you build around Homa as your one value play, and then you can differentiate with the second guy, making that Keegan at times, making it Mito other times, and just kind of going based on that. I think both are good plays as well. I agree with that too. One guy I want to mention in terms of giving myself more flexibility, maybe to get up to a Zalatoris as opposed to a Cantley, or getting up to a Burns versus a Neiman, is Keith Mitchell at 83. Mitchell is someone who can bomb and he can putt. And that's a pretty fun combo for this week. He ranks 12th in distance gained and 15th in putting the past 50 rounds. He has used that to get some pretty good finishes. He's made 6 straight cuts, pair of top 10s at the Travelers and the RBC Canadian Open. The putting could come back to earth for Mitchell, but the distance is, we know, going to be there. And the rest of the game is not bad, at least for Mitchell. He's not a standout in terms of his irons or anything, but we saw Mitchell feast off the tee, finish 34th at the PGA Championship despite struggling around the green. He's $8,300, allows me to get some more mid-range plays with the ability to win. Does this mean June is objecting to Keith Mitchell with the clanging going around the background, or is this an endorsement?
Nah, she's a Keith Mitchell
I think something
guy.
Fell, right?
Well, she hopped off the table. No, she's trying any which way
so that was
she
her.
can.
That was a body. Oh.
No. I like Keith Mitchell as well. We know that there's good driving stats there with the distance. The underlying putting data is good, 91st percentile expected putter over the past 50 rounds. No values are safe, but I think Mitchell makes sense. Also, Hao Tong Lee, I'll shout out at 8,400 as well. But in like my head-to-head against you, I probably won't go below 8,700 with either Keegan or Mito. So I don't think I'd get to Keith Mitchell unless I'm talking tournaments.
Depends. Because like Xander Rory is a pretty high salary combo.
It is.
I would consider Mitchell. I'd prefer not to. I think he's a consideration, I would say, is where I'm at there. Okay. Win picks here for the Open Championship. I have 3. I'm guessing we're going to overlap potentially with 1. But
probably.
Do you have 2 in mind?
Zalatoris for sure, 27.
Okay.
I think that's just a good enough number.
I'm going to block you with him, by the way.
And because JT's 21, I think I got to go JT.
Okay. So my consideration set was Scheffler, JT, Zalatoris. It is no fun if we both pick the same 2 guys. So I'll go Scheffler over JT is my win pick. I will block you as Zalatoris, though. I just think he's too long. I think that if we're looking...
What's Scheffler currently, 16?
I thought he was 18. Oh. Is he actually 16?
Yeah, he's 16.
It literally just moved. Oh, no. Was he 18 when I pulled earlier? Yeah, he was 18. Oh, no. Boo. Oh, gosh. I don't know what to pick now.
This show's off the rails, man. June's tails. There's like a centimeter gap between my camera and my.
Is it June's fault that Scheffler shortened?
Whoa! Don't blame June for anything.
I'm just saying. I could pivot, go with someone we didn't talk about.
I love it. Is it John Rahm?
Yeah. Thinking about it.
So you prefer Scheffler at 18 to Rahm at 16?
No, I don't. But like mentally, it's tough. Like he was 18, now he's 16. It's like I'm getting the worst number. Mentally, it's difficult. So you can understand the position I'm in.
I'm just glad you're not going Cam Smith.
I don't know, man. Oh, this is torture.
Yeah, I think JT, Zalatoris, and Cam Smith are my 3 favorite bets.
I'm gonna go Scheffler. Whatever. Who cares? I don't care.
All of that for that.
I don't like getting him at a bad number that I like, a worse number that I.
Do you want me to give you Scotty Scheffler at 17?
No,
and split the difference with that?
No, because you'll complain about it for decades if I win by a unit. Yeah, I know this. I'd rather lose by a unit and not have the complaining. Well, so I'll go Scheffler at 16-1.
I mean, you're about to perform another comeback on me in the head-to-head for our DFS contest. So,
I mean, yeah, obviously, we all know this to be true, but
I'd rather view it as that I blew a lead than you came back. So
I found a really good bobblehead that I wanted to like earmark, but then I forgot, which I think is probably good karma to not have it bookmarked ahead of time. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so my picks are Scheffler and Zalatoris. You have JT Zalatoris. I think that's a pretty good card between the two of us. We've had a little streak here, so I think that's good for us to keep the good vibes going between our win picks.
Yeah, again, I would go Cam Smith as well. I'd consider him, but again, it's tough because this is like I like Rory for DFS over JT, but in terms of betting odds, like that's not even close.
Yeah, I think so as well. Okay, that wraps up our podcast for the Open Championship. Brandon, any final words of wisdom for the good people before they go to fill out their lineups for the final major of the year?
Yeah, just be open to pivoting. Again, that's kind of always my takeaway for majors, because it sounds like Jon Rahm's probably not going to be very popular, and it's kind of silly. But also, if you're going to do an afternoon podcast, make sure you feed June first.
Or shut the door. I don't know.
Well, she was sleeping in here.
That's cute.
So shut the door.
Okay. Well, I'm rooting for June. Not you.
Yeah, me too.
Rooting for June.
So is everyone.
Yeah, that's true. That is all that we have here for this week on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. But of course, we're here every week breaking down PGA DFS. We also have MLB DFS, UFC, and NASCAR all in the same feed. So search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, people have questions for you on your favorite website, twitter.com. Where can they follow you there?
At Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS, with your PGA, golf, DFS lineups. Wow. We'll talk to you once again next week. Enjoy the Open Championship. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.